welcome to Touchplan Live, Jeevan. I'm really happy to have you here with us today.
Happy to be here.
Can you give me a little bit of background about yourself and about how you came to found OpenSpace?
Yeah, sure. So OpenSpace is my second company, and the first one I started, we were acquired by a company called 3D Robotics, and that is what got me into construction technology in the first place. 3D Robotics is a drone company, and we built a product in partnership with Autodesk called SiteScan, which will fly over job sites, typically in the ground up phase, and do a bunch of cool things in terms of volumetric calculations, but also a very basic thing in that it takes pictures of the site. That we worked on for a while. And then OpenSpace was born through a lot of that experience. I started it with a couple of my friends from graduate school. We all went to MIT together, and those guys started a company as well. Happy to tell you more about that if you want, but the plain and simple idea is that we learned a lot about the value of just organizing ground truth, what is actually going on in the site. And if we could provide a complete picture in a very easy and simple to use way for buys both in the field and the office, we thought that would be pretty valuable. So that's how we got this going. OpenSpace was born on the job in many ways in consultation with superintendents, PMs, and PEs. And when we hit pay dirt, something that a PM told us, if you build that, we'll buy it. We thought we had a good idea and started the company 2 years ago.
Nice, that's really exciting. So what would be your quick overview to someone unfamiliar with it in terms of how OpenSpace works?
Yeah, sure. Here's what OpenSpace does. It's a pretty simple idea. So if you've used Google Street View, which most people have, we've made an incredibly easy, labor-free, infrastructure-free way to generate Google Street Views of your job site over time. So really specifically, the way it works is this. All you have to do is just walk your job. So unlike a task where you have to manually send someone out with a camera to go from point A to point B, picture, we have a computer vision based system that allows a person in the field to use a off-the-shelf 360 camera. These are not special hardware, and they literally just walk the job the way you normally would for QA, QC, or any other workflow. The camera is clicking away. You can take notes as you go. And what our technology does is it ingests that dumb video file, figures out exactly where each image, and then we take them out half a second, was taken, and pins them to a floor plan. So from anywhere, anytime, you can go visit your job site and look around. You can click on the floor plan, see what's there. You can go from floor to floor. The bottom line is you have a complete visual record of your site. And the key thing about OpenSpace is that it's extremely easy to generate.
That's really cool. So how did you identify this as something that was missing in construction? You were talking a minute ago about establishing ground truth. How did you see that was a need?
Yeah, so that goes back to my previous company. So my first company was a hardware company, so I have some experience in manufacturing and a lot of similar pains and frustrations in that world as there are in construction. But those are just ideas rattling around in the back of my head. When we sold that company and became part of 3D Robotics, that's when I got firsthand experience on job sites. And it's pretty clear that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I mean, that is so true.
And many more dollars.
Yeah, $1 million, totally, right? Especially for people that work in the real physical world, like people in construction. And I just saw so many instances where there was just so much time and money wasted because people just didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's a dispute. Did Billy's guys do that or did they not do it? Did they do it well or did they not? And so much of time and money is wasted on that. But it's also so much heartache and frustration. A lot of people's hairs turn white because of these things. And so As I mentioned, as we got more experience using drone-based solutions, it became very clear to me that the idea of having this time machine where you could just go look and view what your job site was like from any floor, any unit, and look and see what's there a day ago, a week ago, or 5 years ago was pretty valuable. So those were some things we had kind of recognized at my previous company. And then Mike and Philip, my co-founders, are very successful computer vision people. Their work from grad school was featured in a TED Talk that started a company, video analytics company. One of Twitter's biggest acquisitions they ever did before their IPO. So, real experts in this world. And with these new cameras coming out, 360 cameras in particular, Mike and Philip started to play with those. And we were all looking for our next thing. And I was like, guys, I'm just telling you from my own personal experience, if we can just give superintendents and really everybody that works on a job site the ability to know what happened, it'll be so valuable. And that was kind of the impetus. That was just kind of a general concept, but we spent a lot of time with various builders iterating on different ideas until we had the one that we built the company on. And I'm happy to tell you, because we did have an aha moment, a literal aha moment. You want me to tell you about that? Yeah. So we had, as I mentioned, built this prototype that would generate, as I mentioned earlier, like a Google Street View style output of a job site. And when we'd show that to PMs and superintendents, they had a lot of positive things to say. So this one day sticks out in my mind so clearly. I was doing a capture of a job site. This is out here in Berkeley on an $80 million kind of multi-floor residential project right before a concrete pour. So I'm showing the output to the PM, a guy named Nick, in the trailer, which again looks like this Google Street View. And you should know some background about these builders that we were working with. They're not mom and pop. Obviously, that project is relatively large, but they're not a mega builder. The reason why that's important is there's no innovation people, there's no tech people, there's no VDC, there's no BIM, in fact. So these guys are very practical builders. And so when they give you advice or tell you something, it's legit, operational and real. So I'm showing him the output of what we had just done, and he was really excited, because, experienced guys who hasn't been burned by concrete pours having issues, right? And having to do ground penetrating radar or dig up, horrible problems once the concrete's poured and there's some issue with the PT cable and rebar. Obviously, Nick had seen that many times. So he was very excited to see the output of OpenSpace, the prototype that it was at the time, being able to look at the rebar PT cable. So I'm feeling pretty good. It's like, okay, this is a good signal, like we're building something of value here. But then he paused and he asked me, okay, this is great, but how long did it take you to do this? He was asking me how long it took me to essentially take all those pictures. And the truth was, it took freaking forever. Because at that time, we had a really manual system. It was very much a task. Take a camera on a tripod, take a picture, move the tripod to the next spot, take a picture, manually associate it to a location. It was onerous, especially picking your way through rebar and PT cable takes extra long. And when I told him how long it took, he was very direct. He was like, no, we're not going to do that. Like, look, I like what you're doing. What you're producing is great, but we just don't have time to do that. And it was funny to me because having done startups before, I already knew the value of ease of use and simplicity, and yet I needed this wake-up call. And then he basically gave us the idea, more or less. He said, you know what you guys really need to do? I walk the job, as do my assistant supers and PEs. If you could just build something where I could walk around with your little camera, and it's kind of taking pictures the whole time, and somehow take all those pictures and turn it into what you're showing me, well, we would buy that. And so I said, okay, that sounds good. Got it. And that was cool, right? Because it was really clear focus on ease of use, a really clear signal on the type of product we needed to build. And the other nice part is that, I mean, to get a system that does what we do and have it kind of work, it's not impossible. To have it work every single time robustly, no limits, is actually a very complicated computer vision problem. And that is our bread and butter as a team. And our core IP is based on that. So that really was the aha moment, kind of the founding story, when we really knew that we were onto something, having studied the market for a number of years prior. And that's when we said, hey, let's raise a little money and start this company for real.
Nice. Yeah, it's really cool to hear stories like that, because I think that there's always, for technology companies in construction, there's always a bit of a gap to bridge at the beginning between the theory behind the improvement and actually putting it into practice like that. So I know we've had moments like that here as well. But the best input always comes from the field.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's the balance, right? Someone was sharing. So actually, this is maybe interesting. So I, as I mentioned before, was at this venture fund, Lux Capital. That's where we were incubating this idea in many ways. So I got that VC view into things. And I think the interesting point is that a lot of companies that enter the space, they don't have any experience in construction. And the failure mode there is they build something that does something really cool, but doesn't really solve a problem that people actually have. And
right.
That's not good. And then if you have people that are purely from construction, they're almost guaranteed to solve a real problem, but whether or not it's a big enough problem that can scale can be an issue. Like if they scratch an itch that is a small problem, but isn't going to build a big business. So it's really hard. It's like a balancing act of really understanding and getting to know your customer, and having a perspective on how you could solve a problem in a totally new way that maybe if it's your job every day, you're not going to think of. But if you have a little different perspective, you can solve a problem in a way that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely. So now that you've been iterating on it and the product is out on the market, what other reactions have you gotten from people using it?
Oh man, I have to say it's been really, really positive. Having done startups before, I know how tough it can be, and you think you have a great idea and you get shot down. And that's part of the game. You got to be okay with taking a punch. I have to say with OpenSpace, it's been quite positive overall. The first moment that was really valuable for me is after we had that conversation with Nick and said, okay, there's a there, let's do this. And we started the company and we're in stealth mode for a little while. And, obviously we were confident enough in the idea that we thought we would spend the next however many years in our lives devoted to it. But it's always a bit of a leap of faith, when you start the company, you don't really know. And we were lucky that after about 3 or 4 months in stealth mode, working with a small set of customers like Lend-Lease, Turner, Hathaway, Dinwiddie, we had that moment where a superintendent actually used us to deal with and stop a $50,000 change order. And wow. It's a long construction story, which I'm happy to talk about more. But that was a good moment for me where we knew that it wasn't just a useful thing that we had built, and it wasn't just a neato thing, but it actually was solving real problems with real price tags. And that was a key first moment for us to know that we were doing something truly valuable. And those stories have piled up over the last couple years where we've been used to kind of solve change orders, even triple, quadruple that size, or get projects back on track that had like $1 million lag. So it's been pretty exciting to see all that positive feedback. We recently were talking to one of our customers who gave us the kind of holy grail feedback, which is, just so you guys know, I've been talking to our teams. We're expanding you guys, and the teams that are using you, they told me, do not take this away from us. If you take this away from us, we're going to freak out, which was great.
That's great.
So that was really positive. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things we still need to do and plenty of things I know we need to improve and plenty of pieces of critical feedback for sure, obviously. But in general, the feedback has been quite positive, both from a direct point of view and then just from a metrics point of view too. When we measure our dashboard of metrics we keep track of have been in the green. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What as you've seen more people using the product, have you noticed specific kinds of data being most useful to the largest number of your customers?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things. I'll pick a few. So one of the things you can do in OpenSpace is, because it's totally a hands-free system, you're just walking the job as you normally would. You can use your phone to make notes. It sounds simple, right? But you see something that is a quality issue or say a punch item, you could take your phone and write a note, speak a note, and take a picture of it. And what OpenSpace does, it'll automatically locate that note exactly on the floor plan where it was taken, pointed at the thing you took a picture of, and it's in the data set that you can access in OpenSpace. So we have seen people use that functionality, which we call field notes, to make not just punch list walks, but also general RFIs and observations much simpler. And we have an integration with Procore and PlanGrid and Autodesk BIM 360 as well. So those items get pumped directly into those PM softwares. And we've seen people really like that because the recipients, whether that's the architect or whoever, when they get that RFI, for example, now it includes the image of exactly what the person's talking about. It's pinned to the exact location and they can look all around. So it's so much easier for them to know what that person's talking about, and such an improvement over having some text description, which they're like, what are you talking about? Which is pretty common. Yeah. So we see that used quite a lot. So just basically field observations being much more efficient with OpenSpace. There's a lot of just basic in-wall inspection type stuff. So you can now just look inside the walls in OpenSpace without literally opening them up, which is quite valuable for straight up ground up construction, also valuable for renovation TI, big time. So we see that. And also for builders that do leverage BIM, you can, in OpenSpace, look at the reality of the job on the left and BIM on the right in the browser. And it's the full model. You know, you can turn on and off layers like a VDC person can do everything they need to do. And we've seen a lot of value there because, you know, tracking project progress in reality to the model is important. So those are some examples of ways people are using the system.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good. I think it's really important to have that kind of objective reality capture that people can reference together, because otherwise it's, you know, people can kind of not make things up, but it helps to have something concrete, so to speak.
I totally agree. That's a ground truth, a shared fact set. A board member at my previous company told me something that is so true for OpenSpace. This was totally outside the context of construction, but I think it's so true in construction. He said, people will prefer their own version of reality if they lack facts. And it's totally true. I mean, yeah, I think on the job site, it's an information scarce environment in general, right? Where what actually happened, it's hard to track, it's hard to know. And there's lots of different parties, whether that's a trade partner or GC or whomever, that when there's an unknown will tend to favor the version of reality that's better for their bottom line. I mean, it's not about being bad or good, it's just natural.
It's human nature.
It's human nature. And so with a tool like OpenSpace, we can just get rid of all that because both people are looking and seeing the same thing. You know, that $50,000 change order story I mentioned was absolutely that. In this case, it was one of the trade partners had a certain view of when the work was done. The GC had another view, and it was really important. Obviously, it was resulting in this big change order, and they were able to look into OpenSpace and say, "Oh, okay, that is the actual truth. And the best part of that story, actually, to me, so the superintendent on that project was a guy named Tim. I was like, well, Tim was the guy you're talking to, like, pissed when you brought this up? And he was like, no, man, no, we're all trying to get the building built. Like, he's a rational guy, we just wanted to solve the problem and move on. And I thought that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It was not about who won the argument. It was just agreement on what's actually there and moving on. So, yeah, we're hoping that we can be used in that way to get people on the same page a little bit more easily and get the building built faster.
Yeah, I mean, just eliminating the disputes alone saves a lot
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Big ones and little ones,
Yeah.
they're all, yeah.
As you've progressed with the company, what's the biggest challenge that you guys have run into?
Biggest challenge, that is a good question. Well, I think this is true for all of us that are in the space and hopefully building something useful for the ecosystem of builders, developers, and so on. I think one hard thing is just making sure people know what you're doing, and generating that awareness, because it's a very fragmented market, to use like a MBA type term, right? Like there's not a channel that you can broadcast into so people know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a grind to make people aware of what you're doing. I kind of like that, though, in a weird way. What I like about this industry is that it's very person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very much about talking to someone to learn about what they do and see if you can make a difference for them. And it's not just like putting an app in the App Store and just waiting to see what happens. So I think that's a challenge, yes, but it's more of a challenge from a planning point of view than something intrinsically scary. I would say that's one thing that we think about a lot. It's that awareness piece.
Yeah, and I think the other good thing about that is that it sort of diminishes the hype factor. It's like any product that succeeds in this market and in this industry has to have done so because it solves the real problem. So that
I totally
word
agree.
of mouth
Yeah.
aspect of it, I think, is a good way that products get tested in a way. If it's made it through that means it's legit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't emphasize that enough. I think that's one really cool thing about the industry is if you're offering something of value, people will use it, and if it's not valuable, they'll drop it fast. So, yeah, although I will say this, I was talking to some other construction technology people and sharing some notes. And one of the things we talked about is when you do and don't have signal on whether people are finding your system or product or whatever it is valuable. And one thing we talk about a lot are innovation groups within general contractors. And they can be so valuable because they help you get introduced to a builder and get you to the right people. But they themselves are not signal. Like they themselves don't mean you have something of value. Like ultimately it's the people that actually are building the buildings that will provide that information of whether you have something there or not.
Right.
So we talked a lot about how pilots are not meaningful, signal.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you think more broadly about technology and construction, what's something or maybe a few things that you're hoping technology will change for the industry?
Yeah, that is a good question. It's funny. This doesn't directly answer your question, but I'll get there in a second. We were, again, talking with a few other people in the space and talking about the future of construction, and people were like kind of joking around and pretending to be giving speeches in like 5 years about what their company was doing and that sort of thing. And one thing someone thought was so good, it was like, 5-10 years ago, people looked back at construction as one of the least technological industries out there. And now everybody thinks of it as the most advanced, most technologically savvy industry in the world. Isn't that crazy? They used to think that. I think that's so apt. I do believe that. I feel like I feel like the men and women in construction, I think, will be viewed as like the most technologically sophisticated people in 3 to 5 years. And the reason I think that is because the technologies that can make a difference for people in construction are just going to be, they're going to have to be more advanced than the stuff that has made office workers more productive, like browsers and cloud and stuff like that. Obviously, that's really valuable for construction, but I think things that will make a real dent for construction will be, computer vision systems like ours, things that can actually look at real reality, which is pretty advanced technology. There'll be things like maybe clever applications of robotics, that can take a process that's a little difficult and make it a little bit easier. There'll be things like that could tap into modular and prefabrication. Those are a couple of the trends that I think are interesting. And I think it will mean that you'll have like construction guys on the cover of Wired magazine in a few years. Like, I think that's going to happen.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great overview. Do you want to show me a bit of the tool?
Yeah, sure. Hold on, let me share my screen and
okay.
Give you a look. Okie dokie. So this is what our system looks like. I'll show you this one project. So as you can see, you can kind of look around and see everything. So nothing is missed, and it really provides that peace of mind that you have evidence of the work being done. Definitely, without having to literally take pictures of everything. And this is from May 7th, 2019. You can see that. What's cool, because our system is so easy to use, is that people use it all the time. Our average engagement on people walking the job is more than weekly, so it's very frequent, which means that you can rewind time. I can go back to April 30th here. So let me do that. Sheetrock's up, and then sheetrock's down. And we can even go further back in time, see the installation put in, and even previous to that, April 19th. So we can do things like compare two dates head to head. So now we're looking at the same place, different times.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So we can measure the progress, look at that MEP behind there without literally breaking open the wall, zoom in. So it's pretty handy, right?
Yeah.
And this works on mobile as well. And as I said, you can put notes in. This is another project, ground up project. This is a field note, this little blue guy. I can click on that, and then I can see exactly where this note was taken. I can see a smartphone image that's associated with it. I can zoom in and really get a detailed look. Obviously, this is before concrete's getting poured. And this is something I can pump into a tool like Procore. To make an RFI or observation or any other item like that. So that's quite handy, and you can see here all the notes that were taken. By the way, this green squiggle is what the person did when they were walking around this job site with OpenSpace. Yeah. And I can click anywhere and warp over to that point on the floor plan. I can click over here, and now I'm over there. So I have that really complete view. It's another project. You can see two different places in time. Same place, May 16th to July 25th. And in this case, I think there's a model in here. I can even open up the model and see both the reality on the left and the model on the right. And one thing we prioritize here at OpenSpace is speed. So being able to quickly look at the model without opening up a big BIM tool is quite valuable. So actually, you can see what's happening here if we look up. So that's quite handy. And not only is looking at the BIM quickly on the right part of the speed that we offer, not only is walking around instead of doing the task of a photo capture faster, the processing time is also very fast as well. So we built a learning component to OpenSpace where it processes the data very, very quickly. So I mentioned before that when you have scanning technologies like lasers, it's very laborious to do that. although the data you get is awesome. And the processing time can take days to get the data back. With OpenSpace, it'll learn your job. So after you've walked it once, it's kind of figured it out, quote unquote. And then subsequent walks, the processing time can be very fast. The average is about 15 minutes. So
Oh, wow.
you walk around, fire off the upload from your phone, for example, and then you get this output within minutes. So that's really valuable for daily workflows like RFI or punch list items.
Yeah. No, that's super cool.
Yeah, there's a lot more the system does, but those are kind of the highlights of how OpenSpace works today.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for the overview.
Sure, yeah.
So what would you say is the next step for you guys?
The next step, well, I guess I'll say this. We have had a lot of good fortune, really, in terms of people liking and adapting and using the tool a lot. As I mentioned, they will walk the job more than once a week with the system. What that means is that we're gathering really a crazy amount of data. Customers have captured more than 150 million square feet of data in about a year. That number is growing very rapidly. That's exciting because it means that we can start doing things with that data beyond what you see today. What we provide today is the ability to look and see what's there from anywhere. And the next step for us is to start, without talking too specifically, the things that we can do to help people in the ecosystem understand what's going on in their job site a little bit more easily.
That's great. Well, that's really exciting. I wish you guys the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks so much for having me. We have a lot of folks here at OpenSpace that are big lean construction people. One of our guys was a lean consultant. So,
Nice.
he loves Touchplan, and we're big fans. So it's cool to be able to talk to you.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeevan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.